Strength training is arguably one of the most powerful evidence-based tools for pelvic floor health, and honestly, for your whole life. She shrunk her life to fit this little fragile version of herself. You are stronger than you think you are. You are more resilient than you think you are. It is the solution to your pelvic floor issues. I promise you. Let me guess. You've probably heard things like don't lift heavy after having kids, stick to walking or Pilates, leakage with running is just a normal part of aging. Those are all the messages we've all absorbed, whether directly from doctors or indirectly from the fitness industry, from our friends, from our family members. But what if those blueprints, those guidelines you've been handed are actually keeping you weaker and more pain and more limited than you need to be? Today, I want to dive into why strength training is arguably one of the most powerful evidence-based tools for pelvic floor health, and honestly, for your whole life. We've been following these rules and guidelines that don't actually work for our bodies. And the crazy part is, doing what everyone else says often makes things worse, not only emotionally, but mentally, especially if we're used to being a little bit busy exercise bees, but even physically for our own bodies. That's why today I want to talk about why strength training is actually one of the best things that you can do for your pelvic floor and for your whole body, and how it's not just about prevention. It's actually about reclaiming your God-given human function as a human to move and get stronger in your confidence and honestly your control. But first, I want to start by telling a story about a mom that I worked with a while back. She had two little ones under the age of 4, and on the outside, she looked like every other mom just trying to figure it out, trying to juggle her kids, her career, she owned a gym, she was thriving, but honestly, inside, she was struggling. She came to me because she felt broken after being misled by multiple professionals for her pelvic floor issues. She had both bladder and rectal prolapse, what we kind of call like a double prolapse. But on top of that, like she leaked whenever she sneezed, coughing, or even like picking up laundry baskets, like, and especially in the gym. Her words were like, I can't even lift my kids without feeling like everything is falling outside of my hoo-ha. But let me explain her background just a little bit. She was into CrossFit, heavy lifting, and she really loved the social community aspect of the gym life. And so this diagnosis and the symptoms like absolutely wrecked her both mentally and obviously physically too. Let's just think about that for a second though. Like imagine not being able to scoop up your toddler when they run to you. Imagine saying no to playing on the floor or avoiding the park because you're scared of the bathroom situation. That's where she was. And I'm not downplaying any of this. Like, this is a real, true story. She had pain in the pelvis that made her feel 10 years older than she was. And she was told not to lift, not to squat, not to exercise, not to do too much. Like, so she stopped and she walked. She shrunk her life to fit this little fragile version of herself, and that's the blueprint that she was told. That's what she needed to do to play it safe, to protect herself, and to avoid all of these things that literally was going to be the solution to her issues. That blueprint was literally wrong, and avoiding those things actually made it worse. It wasn't making her stronger, it was literally making her weaker. Her symptoms weren't improving, they were literally getting worse. By the time she saw me, she was at her worst point. And when we started working together, we obviously didn't jump straight into these like heavy lifting or barbell or things. Like we had to start really small. We had to retrain her breathing, like how she was activating her core. We had to isolate all these muscle patterns. And then we had to progress back into these compound exercises. And over time, like her symptoms got better. And that post exercise fatigue, it actually started to fade. Like she actually saw a difference in her symptoms. And she noticed that as she got stronger, that she could get by without having that like nagging symptom feeling by the end of the day. Huge win. And within like 4 to 6 weeks, she was able to pick up her kids again. She was able to do things around the house. She was back in the gym, like back into exercise classes. Like obviously the load was decreased. It was much less than what she was used to. But she finally was able to do the things that she loved again. Her symptoms obviously started lessening and the mental load around everything like started to decrease. She actually was present. She was feeling like everything felt good again. Like she literally could go exercise. She could go to the store. She could play with her kids. And by the end of the day, she didn't have those nagging symptoms. And these are literally the moments that we look for in pelvic floor PT because women are so often told that they are fragile, that their bodies are incapable. But like you are capable of so much more. You are stronger than you think you are. You are more resilient than you think you are. The body was meant for this. The body was meant to be strong. And when you don't treat it as such, that's when symptoms evolve. Okay. So you can do more. The blueprint you're following is just wrong and it needs rewriting. Okay, now let's talk about why it's such a game changer when it comes to pelvic floor issues and why you need to be strength training. So the pelvic floor doesn't exist in isolation. I know that I've talked a lot about this before. It's not just about one muscle. It's about how your whole body moves together as a picture and as a unit. Because when your whole body moves together, it breathes together, it supports itself, it literally works all together. Think about it this way. Your pelvic floor is connected to your hips, your core, your glutes, and even how you breathe with your diaphragm. When you're weak in one of those areas, the pelvic floor has to carry some of the burden, among the other areas carrying some of the burden. But your pelvic floor is literally the foundation of your core. It's a group of muscles, that connective tissue that supports your bladder, it supports your rectum, it supports your uterus. And when all of these muscles are weak, they're tight, they're uncoordinated, of course you're going to get symptoms. Of course. You're going to have leakage when you sneeze or laugh. You're going to feel heaviness or bulging down there. You're going to have hip pain or lower back pain. You're going to have discomfort during intimacy. Maybe some bladder issues, some bowel issues, or just a sense that your body literally feels so disconnected and unstable, especially after having kids. Like you just blew a watermelon out of your hoo ha. Like, of course, you're going to feel something. But pelvic floor issues aren't just for women and for kids. They affect people of all ages, all genders, and all fitness levels. And doesn't matter if you had a kid or not. I see this literally all the time. Someone comes in, chronic hip pain, back pain, and even some anxiety, some depression, and we realize that part of the problem actually might be their pelvic floor all along. It might be the pelvic floor. I also had another client who I just evaluated literally a couple of days ago with prolapse and constant leaking and heaviness throughout the day. And she's a runner, don't get me wrong. And she wants to be able to do that again, but she was told she can't run. It's not for you anymore. But like, as a runner who's always ran and it was always her stress relief, like her identity, like instead of telling somebody to just give it up and they can't do it anymore and it's not for them anymore, why don't we just give her some resources on how to literally rebuild the foundation of her body again and get her feeling well again? So that's literally what we're going to do. Instead of telling her to give it up, we're going to retrain her body. We're going to really rebuild that foundation again to get her core, her pelvic floor, her breath work, all of that all connected on the same level again. Make sure that she can utilize that connection in actual strength and conditioning, things that are actually going to really help support her core and her pelvic floor together, which are going to be a lot of like unilateral training and then working on like isolated movement patterns. I'm talking like isolating the glutes, isolating the core, the pelvic floor, your hip flexors, your adductors, your hamstrings, your quads, like literally everything that attaches to the pelvis are the areas that I'm going to want to specifically focus on to strengthen so the pelvic floor can do its God-given ability. And that is supporting the pelvic organs. But when everything outside of the pelvis is really, really weak, of course, the pelvic floor is going to have to do some of the work of all of the other muscles around it, but also support the pelvic organs. And if that's the case, like, how is your pelvic floor ever going to get a break? It's not. So you have to strengthen everything around the pelvis so your pelvic floor doesn't have all that load anymore. It doesn't have to carry the burden, which is so important. Listen, this is the blueprint I want women to see. Strength training doesn't break you, it literally builds you. It is the solution to your pelvic floor issues. I promise you, it will be the solution. It doesn't make prolapse worse. It teaches your body how to actually manage pressure so you can stop having those symptoms. It doesn't cause leakage. It actually helps you stop leaking by building resilience. And it's not just about the pelvic floor again. Research shows that strength training actually also reduces depression and anxiety. It lowers chronic pain. It improves your bone density, and it lowers the risk of falls as we age. A sedentary lifestyle, on the other hand, actually increases fragility, fear, and emotional stress. So when women avoid strength training out of fear, they're actually stepping into more risk, not less. I like to tell my clients this: you don't have to avoid life to heal, but you need to get stronger so you can actually live life fully again. And that shift is literally everything for women. So let's get into it. Here's the good news. Okay. So here are some actual measurable physical changes in your body that you can expect to see when you start strength training. And I'm going to rapid fire a few things here. Okay. So first and foremost, pelvic floor muscle strength. Studies show that women who participate in strength training and resistance training actually see measurable changes and increases in pelvic floor contraction strength and endurance. And that structured lifting with progressive overload improves deep core activation, your transverse abdominis, your multifidi, literally like your deepest layer of core. It literally helps to hold up your pelvic organs. That's supported by research. Women with prolapse who strength train also report less bulging, less heaviness, and have better support of their pelvic organs. Strength training also increases circulation to the pelvis, better blood flow, less inflammation, better healing. It's literally to and fro. More elasticity, more tissue resilience. We love that. Women notice less dryness, less pain, more sensation, better orgasms. Women who lift 2 to 3 times per week can also increase bone mineral density, reducing the risk of osteoporosis and fractures as they age. That's life-changing because pelvic fractures and hip fractures are a major cause of loss of independence in women and honestly increase in death as we age. Resistance training also improves balance, coordination, reaction time, meaning you're less likely to fall in the first place. Like, can we just prevent that from even happening? Lifting weights has also been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, reduce cortisol, and naturally boost estrogen and testosterone balance, which is very big, especially as we hit perimenopause and menopause, like the dreaded years of our midlife crises era, the years that we are literally all dreading. Randomized trials also show that women who strength train experience reductions in depression and anxiety scores among improved self-esteem. I'd like to go to bat here and say that exercise lowers this risk because most women exercise for their own mental health, and it's rooted in the identity of who they are. And I know the next few questions in your mind might be like, okay, got it, Courtney, but how do I get started? How do I know? How long does it take to actually see some positive changes? So here's the thing. It doesn't take a year to see changes. Some women actually notice less leakage within 4 to 6 weeks of structured programming. Within 3 months, they'll notice significant changes in their structure, of their posture, of their strength, and energy are noticeably going to be different. And by 6 months, you're probably going to feel some long-term adaptations. Like you're going to feel like your function is better, your strength is better, your endurance is better. It's just going to be like a kind of a fold on your life. Like you're literally going to be feeling completely different within 6 months if you're compliant and you stick to the program and you believe in the program. All right, let's give another example. I worked with a woman in her early 50s who had stopped running and lifting completely in the gym because she was so fearful of causing damage and making her prolapse symptoms worse. She felt fragile and like her body was literally betraying her. And within 4 to 6 months of working together on a strength training specifically program, and I'm talking all the traditional kind of lifting you do in the gym, she was back in action, no symptoms. This is what actually happens when we stop following the old blueprint, that when we stop believing what we're supposed to think, we rest, we shrink towards these like limitations that people have given us. The body is actually capable of adapting. It actually can make changes, no matter how old you are, no matter if you're perimenopausal or menopausal. Strength training is simply the tool that unlocks that resilience. So instead of avoiding movement out of fear, I want you to start imagining a different kind of future. Picking up your kids or your grandkids without hesitation. Running, hiking, dancing, literally without worrying about leakage. Feeling confident in intimacy again because your pelvic floor tension or pain isn't holding you back. And maybe most importantly, you start to trust your body again. You know it's strong enough to carry you through decades of life ahead. So what can you do today to actually get started? Let's break it down in a way that feels very realistic, not overwhelming. So first and foremost, you're going to start with understanding the core and breath connection. Focus on understanding how it all works together, and I have videos of this on my YouTube and in my free community. The alignment of when you breathe and how your core and pelvic floor move together when you inhale and you exhale is actually really important here. So you need to learn to breathe correctly first, then invite everything else I said to move with it. Like I said, I have videos on this, on how to do this. It's Dr. Courtney Johnson on YouTube. Go check it out. Next, once you have an understanding of this, you need to progress with light weights or resistance bands. Once you understand the connection between it all, you add in isolated movement patterns and then compound movement patterns. So start with body weight, obviously. Then, once that feels comfortable, graduate to resistance. Add 5 to 10 pound dumbbell, kettlebell, a resistance band that can literally add a little bit of that tension piece that you need to overload and stimulate the muscle. But the key here is progression. You need to progress. You can't just do 5 pound weights forever. Like, you need consistent increases over time. The next one, number 3, would be strengthen your whole core, not just the pelvic floor. Deadlifts, rows, push ups, overhead presses, literally the whole body. These are going to engage the core and indirectly support your pelvic floor function. Remember, like I said, your pelvic floor doesn't work alone. It's a team with your diaphragm, your core, your hips, literally everything that's attached to the pelvis. So strengthening the whole system is what's going to create that real lasting change. Number 4, consistency is going to be intensity. 2 to 3 times a week is plenty to start seeing results. The important thing is showing up for your body consistently rather than going all out once in a while. Over time, it becomes a part of your life that you want to do to exercise more than just 2 to 3 times a week. The goal would be to increase movement every single day. If it feels good for your body to do it every day, we would want that. And then the last thing would be number 5, get a professional baseline if you're unsure. A pelvic health PT can assess your pelvic floor, your core, your movement patterns so you know exactly where to start and how to progress safely. This isn't just a program with symptoms, and this isn't just for women either. It's for anybody who wants to start and get rid of the problems that they have before they start. It can be prevention, it can be reactive care. And you don't have to do it alone. That's the point. There are so many people out there who will guide you and support you along the way. If you're so torn and you're so scared to start, it might be the best place for you to just start by asking for help.